I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jason. I'm so excited to have you. Now, what people might not know is I had a conversation with you yesterday because I was actually on your podcast, but now I get to learn all about you, which I'm very excited about.
Thank you so much for having me on this show. I'm very excited to be here.
So I don't really want to go through reading your bio because I want more than just what the bio has to offer, because your path has been interesting, a little curvy, I would say. But tell us a little bit about your background of like how you got to where you are.
Sure. Well, I went to a comprehensive school. A comprehensive school, to anyone in Canada, is the same as a state school. It was an awful place, actually. It was one of the worst 5. It was ranked. I actually found this news. I went on the interview with BBC, the BBC over here a few months ago, and they dug out this article. And there was an article in there from the year I was there saying it was in the bottom 5 secondary schools. And it was actually bulldozed down the year after I left. And I can assure you, no one was kind of chaining themselves to the gates, petitioning for it to stay open. So I was never kind of, I think even through school, I was never kind of massively academic. But, you know, going to a school where, you know, there was no science practicals, there was no real kind of passion from the teachers for education. It was kind of copying out of textbooks. I just didn't like school. And also being gay, I used to get bullied tremendously at school. So my experience wasn't a great one. And what happened was we got our study leave, and I was really into performing magic. I'd got really into it from about the age of about 12. And I started doing shows. It started off just busking in Covent Garden. So I remember when we got our study leave, and in our school, normally in a normal school, you'd be told when your study leave is. Right. In our school, they wouldn't tell you. It would just be announced on the afternoon due to fear of what the pupils would do. So we got our study leave, and I then started busking in Covent Garden doing. I don't know. Have you heard of Covent Garden?
I have heard of it, yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. It's like a really famous kind of area in London, but there's loads of street performers. So I started performing magic there when I was about 15 years old. And then I got this entertainment agency guy, this kind of talent scout, that came up to me one day and said, listen, will you consider coming to audition with us? And at the time, I was getting so much business being 15 years old. I was landing these hotel gigs, these restaurant gigs, and I was absolutely loving it. I was making a couple of £100 a night. And I said to him, he said to me, come along, audition. And I said, okay, how does it work? And he said, well, what happens is we take 45%. And I went, whoa, hang on a minute. I'm going to have to stop you there. 45%, that's not happening. And I was quite quick to shut this guy down being 50. I thought, no, I don't want to do that. So then really weirdly, about 8 weeks later, our paths crossed again. And he came up to me and said, listen, I've seen you here again, and I really, really think this is in your interest to come in. And I said, but 45%, I'm booked out. I can't do any more shows. I'm so booked out. So I was doing that at 16, straight after I left school. And he said, yeah, but what you don't understand is the gigs we will give you are probably 15 times paying what you're currently getting. And I suddenly went, oh, hang on a minute, I might have been a bit hasty
Yeah,
the
I'll give you
first time.
45% of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay, we're talking about a very different number here. So it was really weird. I was really confident on a stage, but at that time in my life, I wasn't massively confident. I think I'd had my sort of social confidence knocked a lot in school, but when I was on a kind of stage, I was quite really charismatic and cheeky, and it was all kind of comedy magic. So I got signed up by this agency. They entered me in a few competitions. And then I ended up getting to know this US magician called Jeff McBride. He used to be on the TV a lot in the 90s. He wasn't David Copperfield, but my God, he was good at kind of entertaining people. And he was doing a gig in Las Vegas. And he said to me, I really want you to come out and open my show for me. And at the time, I was only, I think I just turned 17. And it was, I went out there and he said, let's do a month. Let's see how it goes. So I went out there for a month and then he said, right, I'm going to extend it to 6 months. It was in the Palace Station Hotel, the hotel that O.J. Simpson was very, very famous for his shenanigans there. And I opened that show. But what happened about 3 months into doing it was I started to get really kind of homesick. As much as I was loving Las Vegas, I wasn't 21, and there was limitations as to what I could really do. So I was kind of isolated to a hotel room, but I met some great people out there. And then what happened was I came back to England, and I'd done a couple of gigs for Virgin, for the Virgin work. And bear in mind, I have no qualifications, didn't go to college, didn't do anything. Virgin got me for some gigs, and I really decided I love this company. I absolutely love the vibrancy, the kind of sense of pride that they have, and I just thought I want to work for this company. So I found that they were recruiting for ground staff at Heathrow in the check-in, and I applied for a job. The application must have taken me hours and hours and hours, I think even days. And I must have proofread it so many times because my English wasn't great. I didn't, as a child, I never really read a lot. And that wasn't because my mum didn't, want me to read. That was just because I was kind of always a doer with my hands and stuff like that more than necessarily a book person. And in school, obviously, due to my complete disengaging relationship with education, I wasn't very good at writing. So I ended up, I went along, to cut a long story short, got the job there. I'm even the interview, I must have turned up about 3 hours early, waiting in the car park. I was so keen I was going to get that job, but I was very nervous. Got it, and it really kind of changed my life from that moment on. Yes, it was a check-in job at Heathrow Airport, but it kind of brought me out of my shell as well, because I was still, kind of not full. Although I was accepting of the fact that I was a gay guy, I think that I didn't feel that I'd ever had real acceptance or fitted into something, or felt that, I was kind of fully embraced. And I'd moved around quite a lot growing up, so I hadn't had like a massive group of friends. And then I just remember my first day on the check-in desk, I absolutely loved the training at Virgin. It was so much fun. And the moment I put on that uniform, I was like, oh, look at me. Oh, this is amazing. I just had so much pride. But I remember the first day that I was sitting on the check-in desk, and this lady came up to me and she went, so are you gay or are you straight then? And I was like, oh my God. In my mind, I was thinking, how forward and rude of her. How rude. In my mind, I was thinking. And then I said, I'm gay. And she went, oh, don't mind, darling, you're fitting around here then. They're all gay. And so that was kind of my, starting days at Virgin. And as soon as I was 18, I became so upset every time I'd see a plane go. And I used to think, oh, I so want to be on the planes. I so want to be the cabin crew. And as soon as I got to 18, I applied for that. I didn't get it the first time, annoyingly, because you have to go through the same external process as everyone else. But then the second time I got it, And that I just found myself at 18 years old, just traveling all around the world, having a great time, really, really loving the airline. And it was, I think it was really eye opening for, someone being 18 years old. Yes, you live in this kind of bubble as kind of cabin crew. You go to the favorite crew bars, the favorite crew restaurants. We all get discounts because we're Virgin crew, and it's all amazing. It's very much living a champagne lifestyle on beer money. You're paid absolutely nothing, but that doesn't matter because there's credit cards at 18. So you
and
will have
no
a good time.
Concept of money.
Yeah, no concept that this money shall have to be paid back at some stage. So, and I think I had a great time. And I learned a lot about different cultures. I spent a lot of time in places like China and India, Nigeria and Africa. And I think it kind of really opened my eyes. And I've done a good few years at Virgin. I don't have any regrets in my career. I do wish I'd stayed there longer, but, I think I had the grass is greener on the other side syndrome. And then I applied. What happened was, and this is, everything's a long story, isn't it, Tanya? Nothing.
That's okay. I love
them.
They're my favorite.
Oh, good. Well, I'll continue in that case. So what happened was I was living with this cabin crew friend of mine, and her boyfriend was obsessed with trying to get into the police. And I kind of got into my mind that, I can't be cabin crew forever. I do need to get a proper job at some point. So he'd applied for the police, and he'd tried a few times before. He'd been unsuccessful. And he went on this course which you paid a few £100s for, because the police recruitment process is the same throughout the country. So there's kind of a course which coaches you to get in. So I applied as well. He had his interview a week before me. And I remember just getting off of a really long night flight, not having a great deal of sleep. And that was the one thing about cabin crew. You didn't know where you were waking up. You wake up and go, oh, God, I'm back in my own bed now. And I went over to his, because we just stopped living together at that point. I went over to his apartment, and he started going through all of this stuff that's going to happen in the police recruitment process the next day. And I was like, oh, boy. I am not going to get this. This is hard. So I kind of went into the interview expecting not to get it. And then what happened was, a couple of weeks later, he got the call, the letter, and it said that he didn't get in, and his world has come to an end. For the fourth time, he hadn't got into the police.
Oh my God.
So I kind of thought to myself, well, that's it. I've definitely not got in. If he hasn't got in, I've definitely not got in. So a couple of weeks later, the letter arrived at his house, and he said, shall I open it? And I said, well, yes, open it. And he goes, you won't believe it. You've got in. And by that point, I'd kind of accepted the fact that I didn't necessarily want the job. But I felt compelled, because of the fact that his life had ended,
right.
that, I kind of convinced myself, I should take this job now. So I worked in the police for a few years. I didn't have a great experience at all in the police. I had a number of things going on. I was in a relationship at home, which I didn't realize at the time, but I was a victim of domestic violence. I had a really awful partner who was doing all kind of mind games with me at home, and I wasn't having a great time. But then I was going into the police and being bullied by this sergeant for being gay all the time. Little comments here and there and stuff that would just grind me down eventually. And I really didn't enjoy my time in the police. And about 3 years in, I thought to myself, I can't put up with this sergeant anymore. I raised a grievance, took the case to tribunal, and then the police lost mountains of paperwork that just vanished into a poof of smoke. I did. So I eventually agreed to settle out of court, had to sign a hush agreement not to talk about it anymore, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I did have a great relationship. I feel in the police that don't get me wrong, there were many great people in the police. But I think I was very unfortunate where I happened to find myself in a team with probably a lot of rotten apples. And I saw things that I wasn't comfortable with. And I'm not the sort of person that just necessarily bees quiet. If I don't see something I like, I will talk up about that. But that's, not always to popular opinion. When
Right.
you've got a team of not nice people, and you're the person that's trying to speak up against it, you are public enemy number one. So I left the police, and I really had to start my career from the beginning then, because I was on decent money, but I left and I thought, well, what do I do now? And the problem I was getting was every time I went to a job interview in London, no one seemed to be able to comprehend the fact that I was a police officer looking to leave the police. It was like it was looked at as, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you leave? So
Right.
I was getting into real difficulty with trying to find a job. And then I thought, well, I don't just want a job, and I don't want a job that's going to be a competency-based tick box exercise like it was in the police. If you wanted to progress in the police, you'd have to sit God knows how many exams. You'd also have to do. This is the madness. You want to progress in the police, you would have this book, and you would have to demonstrate that you are competent in every single area of law and crime. So and not just on one particular crime, you would have to get a log of many instances of when you have dealt with that. So what you'd get sergeants doing is just wanting to be in custody so they could complete this book, and you'd go, oh my God, a domestic violence has come out. There's a domestic violence. Right, I need one of those. How many of those have I got? Right, 5. Right, 6. I need the 6th one in order to progress. And then you go around looking for particular crimes. Traffic ticket. Right, I need about 20 of those. And the process just was madness, and it just made no feasible sense to me. So I knew I didn't want to be in, one, a corporate company, two, anything to do with the public sector. And recruitment, I just kept seeing adverts for recruitment consultants. Didn't really fully understand what they actually did. And even when I first got into the industry, I still couldn't really work out what people were actually paying for. It seemed to me like a kind of, I just don't really understand how money's being made here. But I got in my first recruitment job, took a massive pay cut in order to get into the industry. Got kind of sold this lovely dream that, 6 months into joining, you're going to be driving around in a souped up car. Life's going to be great. You're going to be wearing, the latest have all the latest toys. And it turned out that the reality was more like, a tram pass and a modest house share in the
And all
suburbs
the
of
McDonald
Manchester.
toys you want.
Yeah, literally. It was Happy Meal money. So I, I quickly realised that I wasn't going to get the investment that I needed. But what I did realise was there's money to be made in this industry. But it's absolute madness how the recruitment industry works. The recruitment industry, and I'm still yet to find any agency that I think is on par with my agency. And because the way most recruitment consultancies work is you come in, you will get no help, no support, no training, and you will be expected to make money. And if you don't make money, we immediately let go of you, not soon into the industry. And you're then meant to go out there and recruit skilled people, not knowing what you're doing. And it's kind of that sink or swim environment. And the kind of senior people don't want to help the junior people because I've been there, I've got through this. You're a junior.
You have
You've
to do
got to
it.
fight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You sweat and blood and tears the way I did.
yeah. Oh, no one help me. You've got to kick water for as long as you can. So I kind of thought to myself, well, I need money. I'm earning probably £2,000 less than I need a month, having come from a police salary. So what I was having to do in the evening was run a spray tan business where I would go to lovely ladies' houses and spray tan them, so I would finish work at about 5:30. Then I would grab my spray tan equipment and spray tan till 11 o'clock at night. And then I would wake up again at 5:30 the next morning to start another day at recruitment because I was earning.
I
Yeah.
have to ask. Because
Sorry, I missed this bit out.
No, I love it. Because your story is, and we had talked about this when we had spoke yesterday,
Yeah.
that we just kind of had felt this connection. And I know that there's probably people going, okay, wait a minute. How did how did spray tan come about? To me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's logical because I've always had businesses that have no connection to each other. They have to make sense. There was no lines that needed to be drawn, but I do have to ask, how did you kind of go, let's spray tan in the evenings?
Do you know what? That's such. I can't even remember how the idea initially came into my mind. I think it was because a friend of mine, Jade, kept having them done, and she was saying it was really hard to find good quality people. And then I went online in Manchester, and I noticed that everyone was doing them for. It was all about cheap, 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 cheap. Who's doing them the cheapest? And something dawned on me. You would find some ladies were offering them for £15, some for 12, and I just thought they're all trying to undercut each other on price, but no one's talking about quality or product. So what I thought I needed to do was design a nice looking website that looks really aesthetically pleasing. Don't get me wrong, it was still one of these one-on-one jobs that you design yourself, but it didn't look like something that had been designed, on a kind of PowerPoint
Template.
it looked good, and it was called Spray Tan Fairies, and I thought fairies kind of goes in with gay man. I'm not, because not necessarily a woman might feel slightly uncomfortable with a man turning up to do her spray tan. They were slightly more relieved when it was a gay man who was a spray tan fairy. So they were
love that name.
Yeah. So I was doing them. I went on this course on this good quality product called Fake Bake, and then I decided, right, I'm not going to price myself cheap. I'm going to be the other end of the market, and I'm the £40 spray tan man. But what you get is, a patch test before, knowing that you're not going to have an allergic reaction to the product. You also get the products are nice, they're good quality. So what I then started to pick up was all the very wealthy footballers' wives in Cheshire and all the very, very rich people, which was fantastic because what they also wouldn't do is just booking for one spray tan. They would have a group of women, so I'd be able to spray tan several at the same time. So I would be doing that, but it was very, 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 very exhausting. And then what I said to myself is, this is not sustainable. I cannot be doing a 12-hour day, or a lot of the time, a 12-hour day in a recruitment agency, followed by 4 hours of intense spray tanning in the evening. This is not practical. But it was a needs must situation. I didn't have any money. I could never lean back on my family. I've always been the person who's had money. All my family have always struggled. So I left the first agency because I thought, I'm not going to get the investment here. So I went to another agency. Exactly the same thing happened again, and it was no investment. And I went to a legal recruitment agency. At the time, I didn't even think I wanted to be in the law. I thought, I've been there, done that. Boy, I've worn the T-shirt. But then something said to me, I'm getting a good gut feeling for this company. Take this one. So I rocked up there and exactly the same thing. Half a day's training. Then I was given this pile of paperwork. Right, please go and recruit these solicitor roles. And I looked at the business owner and thought, are you mad? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm just expected to get on the phone to solicitors. But that was it. And so what I started to do was I thought, I'm not going to get the investment here. But that man sitting across from me on the desk, I can tell a competent man or not. He's not competent, but he is making money. If he can make money, I can definitely make money. So I thought to myself, I need to learn about sales and I need to learn how to sell. So I must have listened to audiobook after audiobook after audiobook on my way to work while spray tanning, audiobook, another sales book, book on communication, book on psychology, book on what makes people tick. And about 5 months in, I became the top biller there. And people then started coming to me for advice. And I was thinking this, and I started to realize then, I thought, I now feel more competent than them all. I don't think this is the right place for me anymore. I built the desk to be very, very successful. But I moved on to another agency. And I've done this over a couple of years. And I got to a point where I felt that I kept building up these £1 million London desks for people, but with no real kind of appreciation for what it was that it actually takes to do that. And what happens is when I went into these agencies, initially I was the best thing since sliced bread. Look, he can build what 6 people can in a year. But then I would ask for a better computer. And they would say, no, that's the computer everybody gets. And I'd be thinking, why am I working on this £300 piece of crap? Get me some decent machinery. And then my mindset started to work, well, why can't I have double the annual leave of the normal person if I bill 6 times more? So I was already kind of questioning. What I kind of realised at that stage was you either need to give me equity of your business or I'm going to have to leave because I don't think I'm the sort of person who could conform. I would make bold suggestions on list. You know, a classic example would be I was told I would be heading up a team, and then I would be given pre-vetted candidates, all of which I didn't like, and be told I had to select one. And I would say, well, I don't want to train any of them. I don't think any of them are right. But he'd say, but they've all got law degrees, and I'd be saying, well, they might well do, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a great recruiter just because they're a lawyer. And I kind of went round in this cycle, and then I got to a stage where I'd built a lot of money, I'd saved up a lot of money, and I got to the point where I thought, I'm leaving recruitment. That's it now. I've had enough of this industry. I've had enough. I'm not happy anymore. I've not been appreciated for years. And I thought, I'm leaving. So I started looking at businesses I could open because I've always known I wanted to work for myself since, you know, very, very, very young age, even since the magic days. I've always known that working for myself was where I wanted to be, but I sort of spent so much time thinking, what is it I can do? What is it that's not been done? What's a brand new business that there was? And I've sort of spent so much time trying to, well, I guess the example is the fork is the fork. It's been around for hundreds of years. People still make forks. I was trying to find the latest invention that no one had done. That was the way my mind was going at the time.
Yeah.
But so then I spent a lot of time looking at businesses. I must have looked at 30 different businesses to buy. So I thought, well, I've got some money now. So I looked at this big and tall clothing business. I looked at an organic food shop. I looked at, the list just went on and on and on and on and on. And every business I looked at, I sort of looked at and thought, so you have to lay out this amount of money and then you have a supply chain. And this is a markup of a perishable good that could expire. And then I'd be thinking, this is risky. This is so risky. So I looked at 30 businesses, went around on a 6-month journey of looking at different businesses. Then I arrived back at a recruitment agency. And I thought, I have spent 6 months trying to devise other businesses. And I have arrived back exactly at where I started, which is now I'm going to start a recruitment agency. The one thing of which I'm a specialist. So, and then it kind of started from there. But I said, I'm going to do things very, very, very differently. I'm going to name it after myself, JMC, my initials. I am going to train people how to do the job properly. And I am not having anybody send CVs out with my initials on because I'd worked so hard to build my reputation. You know, if you're going to trade under my initials, and I was billing at that point about £1 million a year. The average recruiter bills about 98,000 a year. I had high standards from the beginning. And what I gave everybody, and don't get me wrong, it was really hard starting a business. I'd started it, I'd taken on a few people. So during the day, I was doing the billing to support all my aspiring proteges who were trying to get up and running. And then I would be trying to bring in money to pay for them all, whilst training them, whilst doing the admin, whilst doing the finance at night, not having a clue what the hell I was actually doing half the time. Sending out invoices thinking, I hope they pay, because I don't know if I'm doing this right. And it was really, really, don't get me wrong, I got very, very, very ill a few months, not even months, a couple of years into running my business, because I just worked myself into the ground. But, we're kind of 4 years on now. The business is doing great. We ranked number 1 on Google for best legal recruitment agency in the UK. We've got probably the strongest brand in the market, and it's doing really, really well even through the pandemic. We've just still been recruiting and placing people, but like you, I have a list of probably I don't actually have a physical list, but I have made thousands of mistakes, thousands of them. But I have learned many hard lessons along the way on this business journey, because I've never had anybody I've never known anybody who's owned a business. And I never, one thing dawned on me the other day. I thought, I have never, until probably in the last year, asked someone for help. And I've never reached out to like a mentor or anyone. But I think that's because I kind of never even perceived for a moment that was an option, which sounds
Right.
really, really weird, to kind of have got that far into a business. I'd managed to build my business to over £1 million turnover, having never once asked one other business owner for advice.
And do
And
you
it's just,
find that sometimes you get to a point where you're like, I don't even know what I really need help with? Like, I don't even know what I'm asking. I just know something's got to give or something has to change.
yeah, I knew I had a lot of problems in different aspects of the business. I didn't have a clue what I was doing with, I was bringing money in, but I couldn't tell you what we were making in profit. I couldn't tell you what our bottom line was. All I knew was I needed to keep piling money up, more money, more money, more money, so we don't run out of money. But I didn't know anything about budgets, forecasts. And even at the point of my business turning over £1 million a year, I still didn't know much of that. And I got an accountant who I thought was an okay accountant. I thought, this is an okay accountant. She's doing my accountancy stuff. But, little did I learn that actually she was a rubbish accountant, because she didn't realize that I was driving a car without a steering wheel, with no direction. And I didn't even have indicators on this car. And she didn't give me the right tax advice. And then I ended up getting into a tax black hole. And it was all just, I learned a lot of hard lessons, but, now I do feel that asking for help is a great thing. And, I think it's something people should do at the very start of their business journey and throughout their career. But, I think maybe it stems back a lot to my childhood, where my mum had me when she was 18 years old. And, I'd kind of felt sometimes in the relationship that I was her protector growing up. So I wasn't necessarily used to asking for help throughout my childhood. And don't get me wrong, I've got the nicest mum probably on planet Earth. I'm sure many people would say that. But, she couldn't do more for me. We do work together now, which, is an interesting concept in itself.
I
And
can imagine.
it is, yes, it's not without its challenges. But asking for help was never a natural kind of thing for me, or it's never something that I've ever done before. So, I think a lot of the business mistakes I ran into, I probably, in hindsight, could have avoided them had I had a mentor or some sort of person to turn to. But I think even networking groups, for some reason, it just never even crossed my mind to even explore them.
Yeah. And I think sometimes what happens too is that, especially somebody who is, really geared towards entrepreneurship ends up giving more. Like, I always find I
Mm.
leave networking events and I go, I walked in there saying I was going to find somebody who was going to help me with this. And in the end, I didn't find that because I didn't ask, because I was too busy coming up with ideas for everybody else. Because that's fun for me, right? Like, that's like a party trick.
Mm.
Like, people are like,
Yeah.
ooh, can you make these two things? Like, how can you make these two things connect together? And I'm like, hey, let's have fun with this. Right. And then I leave and I
Uh,
go, well, I didn't do anything I set my mind to come in here doing.
yeah, I agree. I think that I think because it was from the moment I left the police, it was just so much go, 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 go. You're in so much debt. I was still carrying all my party debt from my Virgin days, which, had to be paid back at some time. And because I never grew up with a lot of money. So, even when I started to make good money in the business, I wasn't making smart decisions with it at the start. I wasn't investing in the right things. I'd never had money before. I'd never had, a decent income. I'd never had, disposable money. So when I started to get it, I was like, I felt like I was at Mother Teresa. I was going around helping everyone in my family. And, I was being the helper.
But you
But,
don't think about it, I don't think, at that age. Like, when I think back to some of the money that I had rolling in, like even on my first company, like, and I look at it now, I mean, I'm in my 40s now and I go, God, she was stupid. Like, like I really could have set myself up really good. But then I was just like, Yeah, we should have a staff party that we all, take off on a trip,
Oh,
and I'll rent a bus
yeah,
because,
yeah.
staff is my number one thing and it's key. Whereas now I would be like, let's see if this really makes any sense.
Yeah, and I've been exactly there. I hosted the launch party of all launch parties for our last office, which, it was like a circus. We had many acts throughout the whole night, and we were thoroughly entertained with a massive budget. But I do agree, and I think that's why people really like working for my company. One that we don't crack the whip. If people want to have a bit of a talk during the day, have a bit of a talk during the day. It means people are happy. Yes, when I was in agencies, in different recruitment agencies, you weren't meant to talk too much. You talk too much, that's a problem. And we've got a culture where sometimes we have to say, "Oi, hang on a minute, it's getting way too over chatty here." But we want people to have a nice environment. We really, really care about the people that work there. And I mean, not just saying that you care about them, because I think so many companies do. We actually really do invest in people. And, we've had some great stats since we've been running. Most people, and a lot of our demographic are kind of people in their mid-20s. We do have some older people as well. But recruitment is a bit of a younger industry. And we've got people who have joined us, and within a year they've managed to buy a house, which in the current day, especially in the UK, I think the average age to buy a house now is late 30s, 40s, all through the bank of mum and dad. So, for people to actually be coming in and, being able to do that in such a short amount of time is a real achievement. And we've got a lot of people who've come into us earning 18,000 a year, and now they're taking home close to 100,000 a year within 18 months. So there's real success stories. But in JMC and my business, it all comes down to really one, picking the right people, and our culture is just so important to us. But actually, really investing in people, and not you doing what a lot of companies do, which is using a human life in order to make you money, and not giving people real career prospects, not training people, and even silly things like, as soon as someone becomes good at their job, stick them in a management position. Well, hang on a minute, being a manager is totally different to that of being an exceptional fee earner. Being a manager is a totally different skill set. And I think even the word manager, who wants to be managed? Seriously, like, I don't want to be managed. I want to be led.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the ethos that we've got. And it's just great to see. And we've got such a talented team of people, and we are just doing phenomenally well. But I think it's because I think one of the main things is have fun. And I know that's one of your strap lines.
It is. Yeah.
But having fun is what it's all about. And I did say when I created a company, I didn't want a company where people had the Sunday night blues, because no one wants to go to work, when they're feeling like that. So, and I think that's what it's all about. And I also believe as well that people should, irrespective of age, if someone is good enough for a position, they should get it. And our managing director is 27 years old, which is just you don't find many MDs who are 27 of multi-million pound company. And it's just testament to, if someone's good enough for the job, they get the job regardless of their year's experience or whatever. It's about competence. So, and we don't have competency based frameworks. If you're good enough for a promotion, you will get the promotion.
Yeah.
We don't have silly box ticking exercises. And I think people find it refreshing. Even silly things like wearing a suit and tie. I don't like wearing a tie. I think it's very old fashioned these days. And we all wear what we want. We all feel comfortable at work. And I think that's the way the world is going anyway.
I agree with you. And I think that, when you were talking even too about like recruitment, I found that when I took people out of that, because I was in the corporate world too, and you very much in the government in Canada have to fit into a box. You need to have a certain amount of things. You need to look a certain way. You need to have a certain, you have to have all of these boxes ticked. And you could be a shit person, really. It doesn't matter if on paper you look really good. And I know for me, when I started building my teams, I realized that sometimes the person doesn't look good on paper, but who they are and the passion that they have makes them far supersede somebody who's, has an educational background or, has all of that,
Mm.
on paper looks really good, but sometimes life experience is worth more.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that when we hire people, yeah, I'm not wowed by a degree. I'm one of these probably employers that, despite the fact that I've made a lot of money off people who are academic, and I recruit lawyers for a living. And what's even funny is I find myself in a position now where I do lectures at universities. I talk to the law society. I do seminars about the law, and I think I don't even get a GCSE above a C. And I'm now finding myself standing on national stages, aligning with the Law Society of England, doing talks on their behalf to the legal profession, and doing a big Q&A last week. And I did have to pinch myself, and I thought, how funny that you found yourself in this place in life. But and I think that's with me. I'm not wowed by a degree. It doesn't necessarily mean. I think someone can have a degree, but I think right now we live in a world where everyone feels they have to have a degree when they leave school. And I think there's opportunity is harder for people to find now. But for me, it's all about personality. It's about that person's grit. It's about the fire that they have in their belly. It's about, has that person got a point to prove? And our training is really hard. It's really not easy. It's kind of one extreme to the other. You go to another agency, you get no training at all. You come to us, yes, you will be trained, but you will be put through your paces. And it's kind of like, have you watched the film? It's not quite as bad as this. We do pay people. It's still enjoyable. But have you seen The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith?
Yes, with Will Smith.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So when he's going through that hard training, it's like that. And I'm not an easy taskmaster. You will be taught a lot, but it will be direct to the point, quite succinct, and people learn from it. But it's not easy training. But the great thing is, when they get out the other side of it, they come out very confident. They come out, really being a master of, and have good foundations to be able to build their career off the back of. I always say to myself, I don't think I'm a natural trainer. But actually, I've trained so many people, but I don't look at myself as being a natural, stand in front of a room, PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to, deliver a training course. I'm probably, in actual fact, I don't think I give myself enough credit. I'm probably a really good trainer. I'm just not someone who's a boring, stand in front, droning on in front of a PowerPoint. I always think to myself, I never want to be the type of person that people switch off or look like that. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
For me, that would be like my worst nightmare, where people start nodding off because I'm going on. I had to do 6 months of that in the police. And, 6 months of every single day, this training about the law, and you'd have to stay there. I'd have to go to the toilet and do star jumps. Quick, wake up, Red Bull. So, yeah.
And I think that's, I love that, because I think, people don't think about that, especially when they're hiring, people that are listening, that are looking at building a team. They sort of get stuck on that and go, well, I don't know who to pick. And they forget how important personality is. To me, that's 80% of an interview of somebody that I'm looking for, is how well is their personality? How sensitive are they is one of the biggest things for me, because I am not a fluffy person.
You're not backwards in coming forwards.
Yeah. Like anybody who needs to be like stroked and be like, I love you, you're pretty today, you're not going to do well here, because you're going to think I'm like the biggest bitch in the world, because I'm very straightforward. Like I will put you, like, I will celebrate with you, I will do everything, but if you do something wrong, I'll go, that was shit, you had a shitty day, let's figure it out. Like there's no
I'm like that.
There's no middle ground, right? But that was the way, I still remember my dad teaching me to drive, and I got hypnotized by the road, and I ended up like in a ditch. Like I didn't hit anything. We didn't damage. It was a very little ditch. But I remember going, why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you snap me out of it? And he said, well, you can get hypnotized by the road. So you were staring, you were concentrating too long on the road, and now you know what it's like. And I'm like, and I remember being like, who does that? Like, who allows somebody to crash? But you know what? I have never made that mistake again, ever.
Uh, uh,
In the 20 some odd years I was driving, as soon as I start feeling myself kind of like waving off, I'm like, oh, I remember that experience. And so I've always
he
used
taught you a
that, right?
lesson
It
there.
totally did. I was
Yeah.
like, you know, and we were talking about making like so many mistakes, but I think you need that. I know I needed that. Not to say I haven't made some of the same ones over and over again, but the really big ones, I'm like, no, I have been there, you know,
Yeah.
especially running myself ragged, which I think, you know, you had mentioned that you had sort of hit a wall. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, get to that point because you lose sight of things. And it
Yeah.
is just the, you know, you're just trying to keep the train going and keep shoveling coal. So for you, if we can go back to that a little bit, how did you sort of recognize, what was the thing that sort of made you go, okay, this isn't right? Or was it a complete crash?
Oh, it was a full on crash. I got really ill. I also think on this subject, you know, mental health is something we are starting to talk about more, but you know, it's not the same as saying you got a broken arm. There's still a lot of stigma attached to it. I think people need to talk about it more. And I think we live in a society where, you know, would someone feel comfortable ringing into their employer and saying, I'm actually suffering from depression? People wouldn't do that because it's just not the done thing, and we, you know, there's still a lot that needs to be done in society. I think mental health is, you know, a lot of the time it's more debilitating than something physical, and you know, and there's a lot of shame that attaches it. But I got to a point where I suffered from psychosis, and it was a terribly scary experience. You know, I'm still kind of learning about it really, because it's not something that you instantly heal from. It's basically, you know, you think that things are happening that aren't happening, and you lose kind of a level of distortion, and it's really scary because you know, I kind of thought things were happen. You know, if I started to go into the ins and the outs of it, it was madness. But I was thinking things that are happening, and I was so certain that they were happening. And then my mum would be, no, that's not happening. And I'd be like, you just can't see it. And it was absolutely terrifying. But that's because, you know, I just worked myself into the ground. I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. And you know, eventually something was going to have to give. What was happening was, because I was doing the job properly, I was becoming successful. And then what would happen is I would get more work off the back of being successful, and then I would feel more pressure to fulfill that work, and then I'd fulfill that work, and even more work would arrive, and then it just got into a cycle of, you know, I was working all hours of the day, and then I just got really ill, and it probably put my business back at least, you know, a year really, than if I was to pace myself and do things sensibly. So, you know, I'm really kind of aware these days of, you know, balance and making sure that, you know, I have what I need. And, you know, it's been a struggle because I've always been someone that has had anxiety. I think we all have anxieties, whether we want to kind of proclaim that we do or not. I think everyone has a certain underlying level of anxiety. And, you know, I think anxiety as well is a genetic thing. Sometimes it's an imbalance of chemicals in the brain. So, you know, and I think that it's just not dealt with right a lot of the time. I think, you know, the problem is with our health service is it's just not equipped to deal with, you know, if someone's got a bit of anxiety, oh, okay, take some tablets, these will sort you out. And you know, it's, you know, I think there needs to be a lot needs to be done. But yeah, I suffered from that, and it was a really hard road to recovery from that, because it took ages, and even now, you know, it kind of changed my whole perception of life. So I think I tried to take things now a bit more in the slower lane, not
Yeah.
the complete slow lane, but you know, my life still feels like it's a million miles an hour at times. But I think I tried to find that balance. But you know, even through doing my own podcast, I've spoken to so many people that have had to get to a place of you know, absolute rock bottom, or really get unwell, or really, come to some life absolute massive blow, and before something changes. But it's like a ruler. You bend it and you bend it. Yeah, it's going to buckle, but it will snap eventually. And that was unfortunately how I had to learn the hard way.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast, because you've just brought me into that beautifully.
Oh, great. Well, it's nowhere near as established as yours, Tanya. Yours is a veteran podcast, probably in the podcast world. But I started it because I find people very, very interesting. But one thing I did, and I have found since I've had a business, is a lot of the original friends that I started off with, when I started my business, I started to think I don't relate to a lot of people anymore. And I think it's because my whole perception of life was changing. And, I used to get friends going, well, what are you moaning about? You've got no worries. You've got money now. And I'd be thinking of, bloody hell, I've never had so many worries. Like,
more money, more problems.
Yeah,
more money, more problems.
Yeah. It literally, it's like that. But you try and tell a friend or someone that has known you from before that time, but you've got first world problems when they're going, but they're really tight with money and bills, and you can understand why life is all about perspective. It's about the perspective of the other person and being able to see someone else's perspective. But a lot of people look at someone else who's got some level of wealth, or I don't know, title, or and they think that life is glorious at the top, and it's difficult. And I found myself becoming quite lonely and isolated at times through running this business. And I felt that that was probably again due to the fact that I wasn't asking for help, so I wasn't connecting with other business owners. So I think the podcast for me was really an opportunity to, and it's called the Career Success Podcast. Career success, it's a very kind of ambiguous title. Doesn't mean you have to be massively successful. It's a showcase of people's kind of careers, but not just their careers, their life stories. And, and it's actually become really interesting, actually, because it's kind of become a somewhat the adversity show in terms of how people overcome challenges, trials, tribulations. And it's been fascinating for me. And some of the stories just absolutely, blown my mind away. Some of the sales techniques I've heard, and every episode I do it just teaches me something new. And it's so anecdotal to kind of speak to people who've got these such interesting backgrounds and stories. So yeah, it's great, and if people want to listen to it, it's out there, and every single story is very different. And just honestly, it's just the weird, wonderful, and the wacky of every single person, and it's people all across the globe. We have to cater to our own audience. We do have a few lawyers, but we don't tend to have your average lawyer. We tend to talk to really interesting people. So yeah, I love it. I love doing the podcast, and I think it's just connecting me with fabulous people all around the world, which is just great fun.
I totally agree. It's one of the reasons I keep doing this, because it wouldn't even matter. Like, it's just, you really truly do get to meet so many different people that I think in an average day or an average world, you really wouldn't connect with them. Like, how else? I mean, we had talked about it before. And a lot of my listeners know from previous episodes, have tried to get to England about 4 times, and something has always happened to prevent. I feel like I'm never supposed to go, but damn it, I will get there one day. So I always find it funny that I can, like, how else am I going to connect? And this has allowed me to be able to do that, which honestly, I could sit and listen to you talk. I mean, you could read the dictionary and I'd be happy. I'm very upset. I have to say.
Oh, well, I'm also very partial to the Canadian accent, so this is a very good balance of chemistry.
We'll just keep talking and just enjoy it.
But do you have many English guests on your show? I'm talking more English now. You've said it. I'm finding myself talking much better pronunciation.
We've had a few, but I think to me the biggest thing is just the connection from around the world. And one
Yeah.
thing that I learned the most, I think, is, when we were talking so much about asking for help, is just saying, I got connected with you because I asked the question of somebody else. Who do you know that you think would be really interesting to talk to?
Yeah.
And that's how
Yeah.
it sort of spanned out, where someone's like, I need to introduce you to this person. I think you guys would get along really well. And so I think that has been the biggest lesson, for me, is just
Mm.
asking, hey, who do you know that you can introduce me to? And it's amazing what people come up with, like from around the world.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely blown my mind. I think this world of people who do podcasts is a fascinating one, and it's I just think that there's so many. You can speak to someone who's got so much of a life story or a lesson to be told, or the trials and tribulations of their career, and even in the episodes I've done, they've really had an impact on me. Some of the episodes I've kind of gone away, and it's really got me thinking. And then I even find myself, it's really great, because then sometimes I'll think, oh my goodness, that person I spoke to about 5 episodes ago, they said something really interesting. And then I find myself listening back to my own podcasts in order to find the listen that was being said 5 episodes ago. So, not only do I have a listener base who listen to them, I also listen back to them to try and remember what they've told me. So, it's good fun, and it's something which I think when you start doing them, I think it's all about the people. So, yeah, I think my podcast is going to continue, and it's great to share these stories with people like you. So, thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. So if someone is sitting there like, okay, I want more of Jason, how do I do that? Where's the best place for them to go?
The best place to go to is probably LinkedIn. It's where I do live the most. I'm on Instagram, Jason Connolly JMC, or LinkedIn. Look me up, Jason Connolly, spelled CONNOLLY. There's about 1 million variations of Connolly I've heard, but I'm the CONNOLLY. Or you can. You're always welcome to go to my company's website. Drop me an email if you like to. I always like to hear from people. May not get back to you immediately, but I definitely will get back to you. So you can go to my company website, www.jmc-legal.com.
Jason, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you. And
Thank you.
just so have enjoyed your story. And definitely, I always listen back to my episodes too. And this is one I'm really going to enjoy, because I know there's a lot of nuggets that you left for not only me, but for my listeners. And I really appreciate that.
I have loved every single moment. So thank you so much.
Well, I was not kidding when I said that Jason and I could have stayed and talked forever. As a matter of fact, we stayed and talked for over 40 minutes after recording this episode. We just couldn't get enough of each other. What can I say? So I hope that you enjoyed getting to know Jason a little bit more and understanding why the title is the way it is for this episode. He definitely has a life story that takes you on so many twists and turns. And there's so much more to it than even what he mentioned in this podcast. So I really encourage you to take some time out of your day and go check Jason out. You can head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca. Click on blogs at the top of the page. You will see the blog for this episode and all of the easy click ways that you can connect with Jason, as well as his podcast, what he's doing with his business, and maybe a few little extras. So don't forget to head there. And I would love to know, what was your favorite part of this episode? So head over to our social media, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, look for this post and let me know, what was it that you enjoyed the most out of this? I love hearing what your takeaways are. So please share those. So no matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to still figure out how Magic, Virgin, Police, Spraytown, and Recruitment all ended up flowing together, or whether you're trying to figure out how your own life story is going to sound like, make sure that you take some time to have fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?